Hello everyone and welcome to another video and what is my RTX 4060 review. Palit have been kind enough to send over this dual edition card. Aesthetically it looks the same as the 4060 Ti we took a look at. Now according to the box we also have access to what I really like is the Maker feature. This allows us to design and 3D print our own custom backplate and front plate. With the Palit card we also get access to Thundermaster, so we can adjust different settings. We can adjust that light bar across the top as well, make that do different things in terms of the colour. Just a couple of little details that I really appreciate with this card. Now I've been using the 4060 in my i5-12400F system, but I've also been using it in a slightly older, well, in the PC world this would be considered a relatively ancient configuration. It's my Xeon 12-core PC, and this highlights one of the things that I like about the 4060 and something that I've pointed out in other 40 series reviews that I've done as well, and that is frame generation. Now I know this can definitely split opinions, but what I like about frame generation is that you can put a card like this into an old system that might otherwise struggle due to a CPU bottleneck, for example, and that game smoothness, the visual smoothness of the game will improve when you enable frame gen, and of course the perceived frame rate will go up as well. I've played a few games with the card in my Xeon PC and I found the difference to be quite significant when enabling frame gen. I just thought I'd start with that because that's something that I found really useful on this lower end, or what is currently the most affordable 40 series card out there. I want to get into some game benchmarks with my modern i5 system now. Let's run through a 20 game 1080p test to show you what the 4060 is capable of. I'll let you make your own minds up as to what you think of the performance as always, of course. So we'll jump into that and then I'll throw up a few comparisons to an older 2060 that I've been using for the past week as well. I of course bought that card for a separate review a few days ago, but I thought it'd be interesting to see how native performance compares to that 20 series card and how DLSS performance compares as well, just in case you've got a 2060 and you're thinking of maybe upgrading, maybe your card has died or whatever. If you have a 30 series card, the 3060, I mean that's still fantastic. You shouldn't really be considering upgrading, I don't think, to something like this, but I'll be highlighting a few differences between the 2060 as well. But first, the 20 game benchmark. First up we have Apex Legends at 1080p with the highest settings. Spot shadows has been set to low because I think that's pretty destructive in terms of what it does to your frame rates, and TSAA has also been enabled, the highest form of anti-aliasing. I think the other option is either FXAA or it's just off. So I thought we'd do something to alleviate those jagged edges. The average was 215 FPS, the 1% low was 135, and the 0.1% low was 114. Next up we have Cyberpunk 2077. We have the high crowds, high preset, and the high textures. I'm also using 32 gigs of DDR4, clocked at 3200 MHz as well. Now on average we were seeing 92 frames per second with a 1% low of 69, nice, and a 0.1% low of 57. Now as we know Elden Ring has a 60 FPS cap, but it's always nice to know if graphics cards that release can hit this. The usual little dips and drops in and around this area. Looking at this footage and you wouldn't think I've played much of Elden Ring, but it's actually on the PlayStation where I've played through more of this, just to let you know that. Otherwise you might be thinking, well, he's had this game for about a year and got nowhere. 60 frames per second then, hitting that cap, with a 1% low of 51 and a 0.1% low of 42. For Far Cry 6, I've gone with 1080p and I've also gone with the Ultra preset. Now I don't have the HD texture pack installed because I do not have the room on my hard drive and I've never had it installed. Bear that in mind when looking at this footage. TAA was also enabled. The average FPS was 111, the 1% low was 87, and the 0.1% low was 73. Of course, let me know what you are thinking about this card already down below in the comments. We're not ending the video there. I just wanted to remind you to leave your thoughts down below as always, because I do love reading what you have to say about this and all the other hardware we test on the channel. For Forza Horizon 5, we have 1080p, Ultra preset, as usual, this is a very well optimized game. TAA is also enabled here. Now, I play through this race most of the time because it isn't a worst case scenario, but it is a more sort of intensive case scenario. When there's a lot more competitors on screen, we are getting a lower frame rate than we would if we were driving through an empty field, something like that. So this gives us a good idea of what to expect in races, something that you'll be doing a lot of in a racing game. 130 frames per second on average, a 1% low of 112 and a 0.1% low of 102. I'm also a fan of the energy efficiency of this card as well. It's a 115 watt TDP card, which is definitely going to be of interest to some of you as well, I think. And I've left the power consumption figures up on screen throughout, of course. For Fortnite, I've learnt my lesson here. Nanites and Lumen were turned off. TAA or temporal anti-aliasing was enabled here. Yeah, I'd probably leave the settings as they are, maybe turn things down a bit more. If you want a higher overall FPS, 176 on average with a 1% low of 110 and a 0.1% low of 54. Grand Theft Auto 5 is of course a lot older, but it is still very popular, and I like to include it because at higher settings it can give modern hardware a good run for its money, though at 1080p it shouldn't pose any problems with most modern configurations. Here we are then at the highest settings, apart from MSAA, which was off in favour of FXAA, less system intensive. The advanced graphics were also on. Overall, we saw 126 FPS with a 1% low of 95 and a 0.1% low of 87. Hogwarts Legacy, no. Halo Infinite. Why did I say Hogwarts Legacy? What am I talking about? 1080p high preset. This one, I took out of the benchmarks and then a few of you asked me to bring it back. I actually have a lot of fun playing this one as well. I'm not very good at it, but that doesn't really matter. You don't need to be good at something to enjoy it, I suppose. 117 FPS on average with a 1% low of 84 and a 0.1% low of 68. Hogwarts Legacy. Or Halo Infinite, should I say. No, Hogwarts Legacy 1080p here. I've gone with the high preset here, may have been a little bit daring. TAA was also set to low. I can't really tell the difference between TAA low and TAA high, but I'm sure it's there if I were using two side-by-side comparison shots. 95 FPS on average with the usual percentile low problems that I seem to experience with this game. I think this is CPU related though, so yeah, 95, 52 and 41 respectively at 1080p native. Minecraft RTX is up next, 1080p with the fancy settings and ray tracing. No upscaling was enabled here. If you enable it, we do get DLSS, but that was disabled. 72 frames per second on average, with a 1% low of 58 and a 0.1% low of 30. I love this map. This reminds me of a sort of Minecraft Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is also one of my favourite games. So combining Minecraft and Kingdom Come, well, that would be cool. Really cool. Mafia Definitive Edition, in my opinion, is one of the best remakes out there, and at 1080p with what is the game's highest settings, basically just the high settings are the highest settings here. No issues, 135 FPS with a 1% low of 99. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This generally doesn't give us any problems. I think this one's quite well optimized. We do have an extreme preset, but as I've said before, the difference between high and highest presets in games is often minimal visually, so I never really think it makes much sense cranking things up to ultra when you could just put things at the second highest and get a very similar visual experience. On average, we were seeing 151 with a 1% low of 100 and a 0.1% low of 88. Red Dead Redemption 2, 1080p ultra textures, all else mostly high with TAA medium. We are using Vulkan as well instead of DX12, as this generally gives me better performance, and it does mean that the game runs on a wider range of hardware as well. Of course, this modern card supports both. I'd be very worried if it didn't, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose, but overall 108 FPS with a 1% low of 83 and a 0.1% low of 69. Nice. Marvel Spider-Man Remastered now, 1080p, very high preset. Ray tracing is off here. TAA is also enabled. 122 frames per second on average with a 1% low of 80 and a 0.1% low of 61. Saints Row's up next. I know, mixed opinions on this one, but I've been playing a bit of it lately and I am quite enjoying this game. With the ultra settings, including TSSAA set to X8, which is definitely overkill, but That's what it defaulted to, so I left it. Ray tracing ambient occlusion is also off. Here we were seeing 100 frames per second with a 1% low of 81 and a 0.1% low of 69. Again, nice. Skyrim Special Edition. I have taken the risky move of completely removing the frame rate cap here. Now this is best alleviated with mods, otherwise we may get a few physics issues. I've realised I've just forgotten to show you the settings, but it's literally just the Ultra preset. I just clicked Ultra when we started the game and enabled TAA. That might have even enabled by default. 232 as an average. Nothing to worry about in terms of those percentile lows either. This game will run absolutely fine on most cards released within the last 5-10 years. Star Wars Jedi Survivor 1080p high preset here. Now this is of course a pretty demanding one, especially this area. Not made much progress in this game, as you can tell. Nothing much going on with the graphics settings outside of the high preset. Nothing else has been changed. FSR is also off. 72 FPS as an average with a 1% low of 58, so a few dips and drops below 60 here and there, and a 0.1% low of 48. The Last of Us, I was particularly worried about this. I thought this would give us a few more issues, and in different areas I'm sure the frame rate may differ ever so slightly. It can depend on where you are in the game as to what performance you see, but here just outside of Billstown, don't want to give too much away. High settings, SSR was off, as this does improve the frame rate by a few percent. We saw 70 frames per second here. The 1% low was 51 and the 0.1% low was 34. Our penultimate 1080p native result is The Witcher 3 with the next gen update applied. 1080p, I think I've just said that. Ultra Plus settings, TAAU, HBAO Plus and SSR set to low. Again, screen space reflections can really take its toll on the frame rate if it's turned up to high, so I think low is best. Overall, we saw 110 FPS with a 1% low of 74 and a 0.1% low of 49. The frame rate's going to drop a little bit more inside busy town walls. Finally, for the native tests, then we have 1080p in Valorant. This isn't going to give most systems any trouble. I mean, you could probably play Valorant on a GT 710 if you turn things down low enough. With the highest settings here and FXAA, we were seeing 388 FPS with a 1% low of 225 and a 0.1% low of 85. We also have a few frame gen benchmarks with my i5 PC as well, because even with modern systems, of course, this can definitely help if you wish to enable it. It is a feature that's there. I do think it comes in handy, and I have mentioned before, I do appreciate and enjoy using this feature when it is available in supported games. Let's finalise with some comparisons to the 2060 then at native resolutions and in games that support DLSS and a few that support frame gen as well, just so you can get an idea of how these two cards that end in 60 compare. I don't have a bad word to say about the mid-range legend that is the 2060, of course. I think it's still absolutely fantastic, but I thought it would be interesting here to see how things differ. So those figures are up on screen for you to look at as well. But that just about concludes my RTX 4060 review, or initial impressions. I think I'll be expanding on the 4060 in an older PC in another video, because I definitely think there's more to look at there in terms of how frame generation can help things. If that's something you'd like to see, please let me know down below. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments as always on this card. Leave a like if you enjoyed this one, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.